press down on the button.
Раз, раз. Друзья, здравствуйте.
Hello, dear friends. Sorry for the slight delay. I was a couple of minutes late. We have a special person today with us, Chris Dancy. And I can say that he is the first cyborg. In a certain sense, most of us who came here are also cyborgs to a certain extent, because we have different devices with us. We carry them around, and they can record different parameters of our body. For example, I have this device that can tell me how much I consume, how many kilocalories I consume, the amount of fats in my body, glucose. Excellent glucometer, by the way, an online glucometer. And many other interesting things. So they really help to improve the quality of our life. For example, in the last 3 months that I have this device, I lost weight by 16 kilos. But our main hero today is Chris and not me. We wrote a lot about him in our magazine, about his experiments. And I think that the whole world is split into two parts. Some people accept this way, like merging us people with AI, electronics and technologies. Some people do not agree. They think that we have to be natural. So I should speak less. And I would like to talk to Chris a lot more. I'd love him to talk. So let's welcome Chris. He's a really cool guy. My first question, Chris. Do you remember the day or the moment when you decided to control your body totally and absolutely?
Thank you for having me. This is my second trip to Moscow in 6 months. It's been remarkable. I have so much fun when I come. Everyone is so warm and so kind, so I just want to tell you thank you. I really appreciate it. My first visit to Russia was in 2012, and I went to St. Petersburg. But we have to go back a little bit further than that. We have to go back to 2008 to answer your question. And I would say in 2008, I weighed 50 kilos more than I weigh now. I smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day. I had just turned 40, and I had been on antidepressants my entire life, from the time I was 16 to the time I turned 40. So I was fat, I was depressed, I was chain smoking cigarettes, and I would be drunk every week from Wednesday to Sunday. And I was sitting at my computer in late 2007, technically, and I thought to myself, why does my computer know so much about me? If I search for an advertisement or I search for something online, all of a sudden my computer starts telling me all these things. And it dawned on me that because I was spending so much time in front of my computer, there had to have been a good way for me to start to harvest the information the computers were collecting about me. So slowly but surely, that first year, I started writing little programs. I have some pictures. I don't know if they will play, but the first year I started writing little are they up on the screen? Yeah. So the first year I started writing little programs, and the first area that I studied wasn't my food, it wasn't my sleep, it was my social media. And what I noticed was anytime I would put something online, my friends would only like the things that were bad. So if I was naked and drunk, my friends loved that. But if I went for a walk, my friends did not like that. So slowly but surely, all of this data started filtering between 2008 and 2009 into my Google Calendar. So I didn't manually write down everything. It was a program. It copied it. Whenever I put something on Facebook, it put it in my calendar. But also it did it if I put something on any social network. After I did that, anytime I watched a television show or listened to music or read a book, or anytime I went online and left a review for a business, all of these things, hundreds, thousands of pieces of data started writing to my Google Calendar in real time. And slowly but surely, over those first 2 years, I started getting a picture of who I was. Now, this might sound strange because we all think we know who we are, right? You think you know who you are. But in a world where you're on technology so much, we usually put a majority of who we are inside the technology. So if I said to you, what did you do 2 months ago on Wednesday? You might look in your calendar, you might look in your phone, you might look on Facebook, but I wanted to look in just one place, and that was the Google Calendar. So the story goes on from there, on and on and on, and we'll talk more about it. But I first just wanted to stop there and ask you, does that make sense how I got started and what I was thinking?
Понятно.
Yes, I understand, and it does make sense. So, how does it affect us? Now our data is open to anyone, and it's totally transparent.
So I didn't really have an idea in 2008 that in 12 years, companies would be harvesting information out of our phones. I had no idea. Matter of fact, in 2008, I didn't have a phone, right? I had a regular phone. Had I known then what I know now, I think I would have planned my life differently. But your question was, what is that like now? And I think, unfortunately, we, the people, are not benefiting from all the things we're doing. So yes, it's easy to get a taxi. Yes, it's easy to get food delivered. Yes, it's easy to find someone on Instagram to follow. But there's so much information behind having food delivered, like the food, having a taxi delivered, like where do you go, or finding someone to follow online, like who you're interested in, that we don't get to see. It's hidden from us. And I kind of wish today in university, in business settings, we talked more about using the data that's inside our devices for each of us. It can be more than health. Biohacking isn't about becoming thin, it's about becoming you.
Да. Тогда
Then, my question, so this data harvesting, how did it affect you? How come you quit smoking and lost a lot of weight?
Okay, I understand. So you want the specifics. Okay. So throughout this journey, so after I collected a lot more information about my life, I went on after I did the first set, then I started measuring what I did at work, where I spent my money, what I put online. Then I started measuring when I had cigarettes, what I was eating, how loud it was, where I was traveling. I had a lot more data. And your question is, well, how did that data help me do things? So for instance, one of the first programs I ever used or created was I would never get up from my computer, ever. I would just sit there and eat and smoke. So I used a program on my phone that put something on my social media. So if I launched my social media, it would lock it down until I did what it told me to do. So in this case, it's telling me to breathe.
Кто давал эти инструкции?
So who gave you those instructions?
I need them. So as soon as I did what the phone told me to do, it would work. So for example, if I wanted to use Facebook, I had to walk a mile. It wouldn't work. It wouldn't even open. If I wanted to have a cigarette, I had to have a glass of water beforehand, right? So there were all these things that my phone would watch me do, and then if I wanted to do them, it would tell me to stop and do something else instead. A real perfect example is this. Sometimes when I was on the phone, I would get angry. And it's hard when you're angry, you just get mad, you're like, and you just want to like hang up the phone on someone. So what I did was, because my voice was collecting sound information in the microphone in my office, I created a routine that said if my voice goes above 74 decibels, dim the lights just a little bit, right? So right away, I'm talking to you, everything's normal, and I start to talk louder and the lights would dim. And I would know, oh, I'm getting angry. So the idea was I had enough data in this system so that if I started to do something that was a bad habit, the system would send me a message and tell me, stop, do something else. A lot of it was as simple as if I was at the bar and I was drinking too much, my credit card had a geofence, meaning it knew I was at the bar. So if I spent more than an hour at the bar, it cut me off. And if I ignored it, then it would send a message to the bartender telling her not to serve me. And then if she ignored the message, a message went to my family and they were told to come get me. So what I did was I basically just lived life, you know, carried my, just like you, nothing different. But I used the information that was being collected to send me updates about what I could be doing. Does that make sense? Yeah. So instead of trusting my mind to do the right thing, because it didn't, I trusted my data to tell me you're doing something wrong. And believe it or not, because we can't see our lives, I mean, it's impossible for anybody to look down and see their day. I mean, now I can. You know, now if I go into my phone and I look at an application as simple as this, you know, I'll show you up on the screen. Now I can see very clearly how my behavior is affecting my day. Am I spending too much time online? What types of websites am I going to? How is that behavior affecting my sleep? Am I getting out enough? Am I watching too much television? So by 2015, the ability to see everything that I was doing in a way that helped me make it actionable was super simple. But that created new problems because then I wasn't happy.
И как вы...
So how did you, what did you do? You are saying, now you say that you are a very happy man or more depressed. What, you're saying that you are more happy, right?
I'm more happy now. But that's because in 2015, 2016, I kept collecting the health data and the behavior data, but I started, this is all the health and behavior data. But I realized that just measuring your body and just measuring your health, even if you get healthy, doesn't make you happy. You have to think about, well, what does make you happy? And maybe sometimes it is something bad, like a donut. Or maybe it is something bad, like being angry. But you need to identify that, because if you change so much that you become super healthy, no one wants to be around you. When you quit smoking, you have no friends who smoke. When you quit drinking, you have no friends who drink. When you quit eating McDonald's, you have no one to go to lunch with. So for me, it was really about taking all of that information and then balancing it with my values. So what I started to do in 2016 was measure the things that I valued. So for example, when I'm on the streets in Moscow and I see someone and they need help, maybe they've got bags and maybe they're old, I help them, but I log it. So I also log the things that make me happy inside. So spending time with my family makes me happy inside. The nice part about this is the two together help me kind of create a middle ground where I think I have the best of both worlds.
А не занимает
So this free time, so this control over what you're doing, does it take all your free time, all this data management, creating new programs? I think it may like take all, like conquer all of your time.
In the beginning, it did. It was a good 4 years before anyone knew what I was doing. I was very secretive because it looks crazy. I'm not going to lie. But you know, my background is in computers and database, and I understood how to do it. Nowadays, it takes no time because it's done. You know what I mean? I don't look at my phone. I probably spend less time on my phone than my family. But that being said, it helped me start to have a better understanding of why people are not being successful. I meet so many people who want to lose weight, so they measure their food. Well, no, if you want to lose weight, measure your sleep. Right? People who are obese sleep less and sleep more poorly than people who are active, right? So there's a saying that I really like a lot when it comes to biohacking or just any type of health, and it's, we don't know how to measure what we care about, so we care about what we measure.
Хорошая поговорка.
Good saying.
Сколько вот сейчас?
So how many parameters do you take from you now? Are you measuring?
I mean, nowadays, I mean, a couple thousand in an average day. I mean, all the normal things. I think I've got a picture of a slide here somewhere. Let me see. Oh, this is all healthcare. This is me trying to deal with my doctor. I'm not sure what the Russian healthcare system is like, but in the United States, it's so horrible. The doctors are really, they're difficult. No, so you've got all the normal biological parameters: body temperature, blood sugar, weight, height, respiration, on and on and on, blood pressure, blood glucose, etc. That's what I call core data. So there's probably 20 or 30 different biological measurements, nutrition, that I measure in any given day. On top of the core data, which is I'm sorry, that's the hard data. On top of that, you've got what I would call soft data, and that's measuring things like when I listen to a song. Now, I don't write down I'm listening to a song. My phone knows I'm listening to a song, right? Location. And then every single thing has a time. So right now we're here in this location. This location has an elevation, has a longitude and a latitude, and it has a time. But sitting here right now at this longitude and latitude, at this elevation, at this time, I also have a activity. Now my activity right now is sitting, but my activity could be walking, standing, running, or driving. So I could be in this room at this longitude, at this time, driving, and that would be 3 layers with about 100 data points just in those 3 layers. So now you're someplace at some time, sitting, walking, standing, and then you're behaving some way. So are you in a meeting? Are you watching TV? Are you reading a book? Right? So you're sitting, reading, and then what? Well, how is your heart? How is your respiration? How is your blood sugar? And then what? And then environmental. How bright is it? How loud is it? How hot is it? Do you understand? So you take these 6 layers and you take every single thing your phone collects about you and you start filtering them down, and you can anyone in this room could easily end up with probably 3,000 data points just sitting here, doing nothing else. But we're not taught to think about what is a moment. How do we define what you're doing? And it's much simpler, but I think, again, I think I've got a slide here somewhere. I don't think we're doing people a service with talking about how to make it actionable. So if you think about the three areas of your life, you've got the biological, which I just talked about. You've got the behavioral, which is how you spend your time. And then you've got the environmental, which is what's going on around you. These three buckets for every single person in the room define who you are and how healthy you will be. For example, if you spend all your time in a place that's very, very loud, you will eat worse every single time. If you spend your time in some place that's very, very cold, you will not exercise as much, right? So you don't have to think a whole lot about data. You have to think about the right data. And from there, I just like to teach people about it's getting easier and easier and easier. Because if we think about 40 years ago, when I started out working in computers, I'm 52 years old. Anybody over 50? Where are my over 50 people? Come on, put your hands up. There, I love my over 50s. God bless you. You don't look over 50. But when I started in computers, it took a lot to get information in a computer. But slowly, over the last decade, it's become really easy. The distance between you and the information is on all the time. So even if you don't use your phone like I do, you're basically immersed because of the friends in your life. If you've got an Apple Watch or AirPods, the stuff is on you and in you. And I think we're not talking seriously about a world where it's full of cyborgs, right? People who are completely dependent on the technology around them.
Вот можно сейчас...
Could you please tell us what portable devices do you use to collect data online right now?
Well, all the portable devices would just be the biological ones. So pulse oximeter, blood glucose, blood pressure. Gait is measured by a posture meter. EEG for brain waves for meditation. I have a sensor that goes on the meaty part of my arm to measure what I'm typing because I don't want to have to resave it.
Вот в данный момент...
So right now, what are the devices on you?
Right now, I just have one or two because it's really hard, I'll be honest with you, to go into some countries with a box full of electronics. They think you're a terrorist. So I have to, unless I ship them ahead, it's really hard to bring them with me.
How much time does it take you during a day to process all this data? It's so huge amount of data.
Yeah, it actually doesn't take that long. Most of what I mentioned earlier when I talked about the three areas is in your phone now. What takes the time is really knowing where to pull it out. If I said to you, where is all the location data in your phone, would you know? Yeah.
Во многих местах.
In many places.
Exactly. It's many places. So, I think taking time to understand where it is and pull it out is really what the most amazing thing that I did. Today, we talk about privacy and people are afraid that companies are using this data, and I'm pretty sure they are. But what scares me more is that regular people aren't interested. I just wish everyone in this room was as interested in themselves as Facebook is. Because Facebook's really interested in you. I think you should be interested in you. Does that make sense?
Тут все...
I think everyone is interested in themselves here. Maybe the main question.
I was kind of put the data stack up on the stage. Oh. That's your life.
So do you process them in one specialized program or you have many different programs? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, sir, I can. So the things that aren't digitized. So let's talk about the hardcore stuff. For example, last week, because I'm getting older, I had to have a colonoscopy. Not fun. Those things are manual. So they come in, they get scanned, they go into my database, and they get tied to a health record. But all of the behavioral and biological things that get collected automatically, for example, someone's at my door right now, right? All of those types of things get automatically put in my database in real time. So I don't manually enter them. I use a combination of APIs, RSS feeds, some custom code, and then anything I can't extract from the phone, I use secret Twitter accounts to tweet out the data, and then I grab it off of Twitter. So it all goes into my database in real time without me doing anything. Even right now, as I'm yelling, it's going into the system.
Ну,
So it's clear you don't have friends now with whom you drink, so with who you smoke. So do you have friends who share with you who have this program, who want to live healthier and longer lives?
So that's a very good question. So I have new friends, obviously.
более интересные.
More interesting?
I'd say they're extremely more interesting because they get off doing really weird things. You know, when you drink and smoke and do other recreational things, life is fun, but there's a lot of problems the next day. I just have my problems real slow all day long instead of all at once. The type of people I'm friends with now are interested in the things that I'm interested in. Some of them are awareness, you know, evolutionary psychiatry. I'm really into that. And I'll be honest with you, I think once you find out who you are and what you value, the type of people you want to hang out with become few and far between. When you meet someone like when I met you, I knew instantly you were a good man. I was like, you can just tell, you know what I mean? And I hope I'm right.
Но для того, чтобы...
So to be sure, you have to get a look at my data?
No. I have a saying that if you wear sensors long enough, you become one. So a lot of times I can just look at people in the audience and tell you their data even without seeing their data. You know, because you just get trained to what, I mean, you can usually look at someone and tell you what they weigh, but if I look at someone and tell you what I think their heart rate is, that's different, right? If I look at someone and say what I think that person's respiration is, that's different. So I learned to just know by looking at people. So now I just try to be with people who are more healthy. The easiest way to do this is I do phone palmistry, where I look at people's phones. I don't even look at their data. I just look at the home screen. Yes. And on the home screen, I can tell a lot about a person just from looking at the phone. So on your home screen, it's completely full of icons. There's no space at all, as you can see, right? Not one room for one more thing. So what this tells me is your life is really full. You're always racing from place to place, probably sometimes late, but that's because you have a lot of things you're focusing on, okay? Also on your phone, you've got a couple different apps in here that are focused on safety and security. If you notice, the whole bottom row of icons are about where you are, about protecting yourself from the elements or the weather, and then this one is just like a picture of a flower. So you're someone who's very thoughtful about making sure that the people around you are safe, and you are safe, and it's all, you know, always on your mind. It's very obvious. But you're also someone. Are you right-handed or left-handed?
Yeah.
Right.
Right-handed.
Yeah. You're also someone who really is also on a health journey. So you're starting to take your health and your life much more serious. See how my thumb goes right over the heart icon? So, you know, that's also something that's super important to you.
По пути к киборгам, да.
Oh, well, I could go on and on and on. But I teach people to trade phones and then look at them and tell the person next to them what they think the other person is like just by looking at the home screen. Because a lot of times, even when we don't try, we put on the home screen who we are. So for example, on my home screen, I've got no icons, right? No icons at all. Because when I open my phone, I don't want to race in and do something right away. If I go to my second screen where my icons are, I've got icons really about where I am in my time. So instead of having like a traditional calendar, my calendar is the weeks of my life. So it'll be hard to see for the people in back. But do you see all those little boxes? So each one is 1 week in my life. So
Много-много точечек.
so instead of seeing what day I'm on, I see how many weeks I have left to live. Right? So it's really about arranging your device in a way that brings you more into the present moment, but also helps you focus on being healthier for the people you love. You know, I have an 8-year-old daughter, you know, and that means a lot to me now that I'm much healthier, that I can be there for my family, whereas, you know, probably 10 years ago I wouldn't have been.
У меня
I have a 9-year-old daughter, and she also affects me. My question, how does this data affect your health? The program gives you some advice, how to live right, reminds you that there are some bad habits and you shouldn't do it, or maybe you're missing something. Or are you using some additives, some bioactive substances?
I don't take any additives or supplements. I mean, I eat pretty regular, I'll be honest with you. About 4 years ago, I made a choice to actually relax the restrictions on my diet because it was really hard to be friends with regular people when you ate so strict. I mean, I would drink, you know, 2 or 3 liters of water every few hours. I would eat no meat. Nobody wanted to be around me. So I had to start to relax that a little bit if I wanted to be with people. So the system now works by, if it sees me doing something, it sends me a message. It can either send that message at a specific time, it could send that message at a specific location. So for example, going someplace I shouldn't be, or staying someplace too long, like the shopping mall. Or if it sees me doing something that is going to be a detriment behaviorally, so listening to music or being on YouTube for 5 hours straight. Or maybe if I stay seated too long or stay in bed too long, I get a message. Or if my heart rate gets high or my nutrition is off, or finally if the environment's too bad. So the types of messages that I have sent to me, think of them almost as turn-by-turn directions, like GPS. You know, when you put an address in and it takes you it's the same thing. I need to lose 5 pounds. I want to meditate. I want to be nicer next week. These are all things you can do if you had something reminding you. I sometimes joke and call it Big Mother. And then when I get these alerts, they can either come in on my computer, on my phone, to my watch, to my car, or they can come through my house. So if you think about it, all the data and everything you do with your phone every day is then stored someplace, maybe Facebook, maybe Apple, maybe Google. But instead of them keeping it, I just said, I want a copy, and if I do some things that I don't value, send me a message, and if I ignore it, put a message on my watch, and if I ignore that, when I'm in the car, don't let me listen to music until I do the right thing. And if I ignore that, put the message through the house, right? Make it too hot. A fun one is, if I have people visiting, and they're staying too late and I want to go to sleep, the house gets warmer very slowly until they get uncomfortable and they just leave.
Интересно. Вот.
Very interesting. But do you have some community on social media, some supporters or followers that use the same system? Maybe you exchange some results, because you can create a separate Facebook about that.
Yeah, you know, this is this is year 12. And I'm always asked to make something that the public can use or to share this. And I haven't said this publicly, but I am in the process of creating something that'll be available for anyone in open source. I'm building it on a tool called Airtable. There's a video out right now on YouTube of me showing it, but anyone should be able to use it who's interested, probably by summer. As far as having a community where I support people and people support me, I don't have anything like that on Facebook. I get hundreds of emails a week from people. You know, just this morning I got an email from a young lady who's suffering from a brain disorder, and she had watched a couple of videos about me, and she wanted to tell me about, you know, how much it's helping her. See, the problem now is a lot of people are starting to judge people who use technology. Like, we get mad at our kids if they're on their phones too much. And we don't like it when people are, you know, taking selfies. And there's a lot of shame around using technology. And I feel like if I were to create a community where people could use technology even more, that it might get, the people's opinion might think it's narcissistic. And right now, my main concern for the world is not really people's physical health, it's their mental health. Because it's really hard for young people to find good jobs and love. And it's really hard for parents to feel close to their kids, because everybody feels like there's this phone between them and everyone else. So, you know, I'd rather build a community to help people learn to be okay with technology before I teach them how to be super people. Does that make sense?
Понятно.
Yes, it does. Can I ask you one more question? For example, which device are you looking forward to have?
Gadgets.
Well,
Чего мне хватает?
What are you missing?
well, there's one I would like, but it's more convenience than anything else. So if you have diabetes, you can have a blood glucose being monitored continuously, so you don't have to prick your finger. I kind of would like that. I'm very affected by blood glucose. I'm not diabetic, but like a little bit, and I'm very angry, you know. So I would like something like that. The other thing that I would love, I mean, more than anything, and this is not convenience, this is, no, not that. Do you know what a functional MRI is?
Да.
So
Yes.
it's an MRI, but you can see the brain in real time. I would love that, because I have this dream of being able to take fond memories that I have of people and storing them, and then if something happens to me, being able to share those memories with someone else so they could relive them, almost like a movie in their head. I think that would be so wonderful.
Да, я понял.
Okay, I got you. But actually, there are some prototypes of the first device that you mentioned. As to the second one, I guess we'll have to live a longer life to see it.
Вы
Many say that you think that fighting against aging will fail. It doesn't make sense to fight aging. Why do you think so?
I don't want to die. So I'll just be very clear with that. I have no
Это хорошая новость.
That's good news.
I have no desire to die. But I do find there's something profoundly humbling about being aware of death. I know that when I'm my most successful, most healthy, and most rested, I can be an asshole, right? But there's something about knowing that at any moment your life could be taken that forces me to treat not only myself but people around me better. And my fear is if we actually get to the point where we can replace a lot of the body, or we can do something to extend life much longer, that people might be a little bit mean. I mean, some of the worst people you can meet are on vacation. And, you know, there's something about the entitlement of thinking you've got time that ruins people. It's just how I see it.
В раннем детстве еще.
Also, at early age, you can see people that are nice.
Говорят, что вы считаете вот ваше звание сам подключение.
Some people say that the status of the most connected person in the world is no more relevant. It's no longer relevant. Why?
I mean, I don't think it's relevant.
Why?
Because everybody's super connected now. You know, from AirPods to smart bands on their wrist, to phones, to devices in their home, to autonomous cars. I mean, compared to where I was in 2008, people have a lot going on. The challenge, though, is I'd rather be known as the most documented person. Because I think being documented is much more valuable than being connected. We're in an age where it's really easy to forget how you spend your life. And for better or for worse, I'm pretty sure about everything I do.
Спасибо.
Thank you. There are more questions that I'm interested in, as well as other people. What should you start with when you have monitoring over yourself, and how can you cope with such a big amount of information? For example, you know, if I collect all the data about myself, it'll take me half a day to process it.
Yeah, it's hard to get started because people get overwhelmed, especially when they see charts like the ones I'm putting up. They're like, oh my gosh, where do I start? I've been doing this for 12 years. I teach a class at university on how to, frack a phone. But if you want to start tracking, and if you're tracking now, I would suggest you stop and come back to this. And that is, think about what you value, right? Don't try to have a certain amount of steps or a certain diet or a certain amount of money in the bank. Just think about what you value. You value your 9-year-old, right? So if that's what you value, then you have to start thinking about all the things you can do that intersect with your 9-year-old. Only measure things that take you away from that, right? So you can look at that two ways. Right now, my job is taking me away. Or you could measure it in the future. If I'm not healthy, health will take me away, right? So I just tell people, start very, very small and start with something that you're not too passionate about, right? If you don't care about how often you listen to music, measure the music you listen to. It's interesting how if we spend a lot of time listening to music and then suddenly stop, that's usually our mind's way of saying we're anxious or we're depressed. So I think if you're going to start in an area that you're not interested in. For me, I think location is a great area. We all travel all day long. When we're traveling, we start someplace and we end someplace, and in the middle, we're moving. Well, how much time you're moving is time you're not in places you want to be, right? So something simple like tracking location is very powerful to help you understand your life. If you go at this and say, I'm going to get thin, or I'm going to get muscle, or I'm going to find love, or I'm going to change my job, or I'm going to hack my diet so I have more focus, you'll fall apart. There's too many factors that you can't see yet that are making you the person you are today. And until you can break them apart, almost like a table of elements, you won't know. The other thing I say if you want to start tracking, besides start simple, is don't be too worried about being perfect. If you track for 4 days and then miss something, it's okay. I see a lot of people who get smart devices and they start to exercise, but then if their smart device doesn't have a charge, they stay home. Because if they can't track it, it doesn't count. You don't get better by counting steps, you get better by taking them. And I think we live in a culture now where we're so obsessed with tracking and perfection that we're kind of missing the goal. And that's why I say start with something you don't care about and then move forward.
It's very good Zen advice. Dear friends, maybe you would like to ask questions because I'm going to take your time. Maybe it's such a rare person. Yeah, we need a mic.
How could you characterize yourself? Are you mostly the digital man or you are the artificial intelligence instrument? Thank you.
You can keep it. I mean, in my heart of hearts, I'm a data man. I love data. I like to crunch numbers. I like to see how things align. I like to see large amounts of data at once. I don't like to look at data for a day. I like to look at data for a decade. There's just something really peaceful about the act of reflection. And data is one of the few places in science where you can be a mindful cyborg.
Еще кто-нибудь есть?
Anyone else? Questions?
Elvira, and the question is, what time do you usually go to sleep and what time do you usually wake up, and what's the ideal time for sleep? Thank you.
So thank you for the question. It varies because now that I've traveled here, my time is way off. But when I'm normalized in a time zone, between 9 and 9:15, I fall asleep. And about 6 to 6:30, I wake up, unless there's a full moon. During full moons, I've got about 15 years worth of sleep data. My sleep has a break right in the middle, so I wake up for about 15, 20 minutes. Something you guys might want to check out is put the moon on your calendars, the full moon, not the new moon, and start checking. Almost 90% of women and a very high percentage of men have trouble sleeping right around the moon. Do any women in here know what I'm talking about? Yeah. And it's something we don't talk about, but so many people really suffer thinking, what's wrong? I can't sleep. And it's not you, it's the moon. Breathe, breathe. Simple things. That's the other great thing about data is there's so many things in your life that aren't your fault. I promise. You're not broken. Usually what you're doing is fine. There's something influencing all of the data that is you that's making you do what you do. And I'll be honest with you, most of the time it's your friends.
Thank you very much for the presentation and for explanation. I've got a question about the difficulties of this approach. The question is, my feeling is that you must be very focused on all of these apps and all the activities they ask you to do. And the question is how focused you are on all of these things, and what would you recommend to a regular person who just lives a real life, like we work every day in the office from 9 to 6, and how can you combine this type of focusing on applications, on this biohacking and whatever, and your real life? And I would appreciate if you also can recommend something to start with. For instance, what would you recommend to do for a person who just wants to lose some weight, or probably to improve his health, which is not that complicated and not that, because it looks very, very difficult. Thank you.
Okay. So it looks difficult, but I promise it's not. So there's an application that anyone in this room can try out. It's free. It's not mine. I just like it. Called Gyroscope. So Gyroscope will log some things for you, and you can add more to it the longer you go along. You know, I like to think I'm a regular person with a regular job and all the things you mentioned. The real challenge when you want to log something is the desire to change. And so often, if your mind is telling you that you need to change, there's actually a question you need to ask before you even try to change. And that question is, for who? Right? Because you can change anything. But I found, and most of the people I work with come to find out, they didn't want to change. They were changing for someone else. So I think it's really important that you also, when you're getting started, decide, is this really for me? If you're on Apple, there's a great app called LifeSum, L-I-F-E-S-U-M. LifeSum is a very simple application, keeps track of where you are and how long you're there. You know, and I'll just say this last, if anyone in this room is feeling overwhelmed and wants to do something to change their life, you can literally call me. My phone number is on the internet. My email is on the internet. You're not stuck, and it's not hard. You just need someone to believe in you as much as your phone. Right? Our phones really believe in us, but the people in our life sometimes don't. And I'm telling you right now, it's not hard to be you. You just have one person believe in you.
More questions, please? Thank you very much, Chris, for a very important thought that you delivered to us, talking about now and here, when an application can assess millions of data, like you now assesses 1,200, but I think there are even more. So the question is, what kind of discoveries did you make during last year, for instance, analyzing several parameters at once? For instance, when you spend a lot of time on YouTube, so then you can alert yourself. But talking about several complex algorithms, do you use such a tool?
I mean, so yeah, I mean, there were some things I've done in the past year to really change my behavior. One of them is I've built a certain amount of resiliency routines. And what I mean by that is I want to try to avoid being angry or anxious. Anxious meaning I'm nervous or I've done something wrong or I need to hang on to my house, hang on to my family, all these kind of hard mental things. And one of the things I found in my own data was after I have a period of what I would call dark emotions, anxiety, depression, rage, envy, all the ones that make life ugly, that always after I have these periods of time, I usually engage in things that are very anxiety provoking. And what I mean by that is nowadays, in the past couple of years, I spend about an hour each week just watching videos of people being angry, watching videos of people being anxious, watching videos of people talking about suicide, watching videos of people talking about loss and death. And what that's done is it forces me to have a lot of those feelings before I have them. And it's weird because ugly emotions, they just need to run and get their energy out and then they go. And you can do this by going to theater, you can do this by watching television, but for me, by creating these very dark playlists of really crazy things, I've really learned to kind of become very aware of my mind Because you watch someone go crazy, like right here in front of you. Like, that's what it was? You're going crazy over that? And then suddenly you go, oh, that's me. So I think with my data, I've been able to understand a little bit more about preemptively stopping these things. You know, there have been other strange things in the past year that I've caught, food hacks and things like that, but it's, at this point, I really don't read a lot into it, if I'm being honest with you. Because I'm pretty happy knowing that I'm going to die, and no matter how healthy I get, I can't stop that. And the best thing I can do is be an absolute perfect person to everyone I meet, and I'm fine, right? And I think it's only when you try to save what you think you're losing that you become crazy. Oh, thank you. That's very kind.
Добрый вечер.
Good evening, Chris. A question. So you said a couple times during this evening that apps suggest you what to do by the amount of some data that they received from you. The question is from what resources they, so how the apps know what to do to you. So through some specialist advice to do this or that, how do they know?
So it's not as hard as it sounds. So if you're not a programmer and you're just a regular person and you want to make this happen, you have to take your data. I don't care. It can be location data, maybe Facebook posts, any data you want. And you have to put it someplace where it can be watched. So in this case, you could use a database like Airtable or a Google Sheet. The next thing you have to do is you have to create a trigger. And all that trigger says is, every time, I can't see your first name, I'll just call you Jeff. You're probably not Jeff. But every time Jeff goes to McDonald's, every third time, the trigger watches that and then sends you a message. So there are tools to do this. The easiest tool is something called Zapier. Z-A-P-I-E-R. Zapier, anyone, you, probably your mom, could go on there and say, if this happens, do this, and then do that. So, I mean, it sounds odd, but again, if you could see what your phone is seeing about you, you'd go, oh, wait a minute, I want to get a reminder next time that's about to happen. You know what I mean? So, again, I didn't make this talk very technical in nature because, to be honest, I didn't know I was supposed to. I put some technical things up in the slides. But if you want to reach out to me afterwards, I can send you some resources as if you'd like to set up something yourself. Did I answer that question correctly? I did? Okay, thank you. I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
Good evening, Chris. My name's Anastasia. Thank you very much for your speech. I have a very important question because women mostly are more spiritual, maybe, so about all the soul things. So could you please tell me if you have, if you're on the same page with your family, with your relatives, in terms of what you are doing? Do they support you? So in what? So did you manage to find some balance in your life between work, your hobbies, your family? And I'm also interested to know about your weakness that you're ready to talk to us about, and if there is something in your life that's really like a burden and you'd like to let it go. Thank you.
Wow, I feel like I'm at church. So yes, my family is supportive, with the exception of my mother-in-law. Do you have a word in Russian for mother-in-law? My mother, it doesn't matter what I do, my mother-in-law hates me. But, you know, I mean, I still have some burdens. I mean, one of the things I struggle with that I just can't measure, no matter how I think about it, is how simple everything is. I wish problems didn't seem so simple. You know, the fact that we're choosing to ignore so many simple things makes me very upset. It's a real burden. And, you know, sometimes when I'm walking around Moscow and I look at people, they're so sad. And I just want to help them. But there's only one me, you know what I mean? And I don't want to be burdened by this desire to help and stop and be with every person I see that hurts. But I just feel like if every person in this conference for one moment were to stop and say hi to a stranger, the world would instantly get healthy. But it's a real burden, and I think, I don't know, I struggle as I get older because I also don't want to be that person who is a martyr. And I don't want to be that person who thinks they can fix things, because I can't, I'm just one person. But I sometimes feel, I'll just end with this. You've got a young child sitting next to you. I sometimes look at young people, especially that young man's age, and I just feel hopeful. Because there's so much that they're growing up with that will be radically different than what we grew up with. And I believe if you're under 10, or you've got children under 10, they're going to be fine. I believe if you're between 15 and 35, you've got a real journey ahead of you. If you're between 35 and 50, get busy learning what you need to do to stay employed, stay healthy, and to support people. And if you're over 50, thank God, because you made it. But that's where we're at right now. And I just think we need to do everything we can to make sure that the people who are under 10 have something to live on and people to love. And the rest of it can wait.
Крис, спасибо.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you for your courage to be so open, to share your observations. We feel a lot of richness there, and it's great that you inspire us and fill our life with real riches that you already have. Thank you. And my question, if I can. How do you see the results of your unique observation for the nearest future? So you publish something on the internet and other things, so do you hope for some feedback, for some productive feedback?
I wrote a book last year called Don't Unplug, How Technology Saved My Life and Can Save Yours Too. But I think in the near term, I mean, if I'm being honest, I would really like to just step back. I would like to step back from the public. People are still overly concerned about like things that I think are gone, like privacy. I mean, people are really concerned about it. And I don't know in Russia if it's a real concern, but in America, everyone's worried about it. And it doesn't exist. It never has, and it never will. Now, I'm not saying that safety isn't important in technology and security, but I'm frustrated with the kind of silliness that we're still talking about, you know. Like, am I a person or am I a machine? You know, I get these questions all the time, and I'll tell you one thing right now, I'm pretty technical, and I'm probably the most human person you'll ever meet because I'm very technical, right? I mean, tools extend us. These glasses make me a cyborg. These shoes make me a cyborg. A car makes you a cyborg. What makes you a human is how you treat the tool.
Крис, спасибо еще.
Thank you once again, Chris. I just wanted to emphasize that we shouldn't be afraid of feedback, because feedback can develop your wisdom and enrich you.
Yes.
Друзья, есть вопросы с каких-нибудь?
Any other questions? Then thank you, Chris. It was very nice to meet you. I would like to wish you health. That's the most important thing, I guess. And all the success.
Thank you, everyone. Be kind to each other. Be good to Russia. And thank you for sitting here and listening to me ramble. Thank you.
Уважаемые участники, большая просьба не забывать сдавать